Hej, jeg hedder Galyna, og det er sjovt at blive her den aften.
Since we are talking about a band from Denmark today, I thought it would be the perfect opportunity to invite a guest from Denmark.
Welcome to our King Diamond album ranking.
Musically, House of God doesn't offer as much variety as other King Diamond albums. Lyrically, it refers to the popular conspiracy theories running about at the time about Maria Magdalena, culminating in the novel and Hollywood movie The Da Vinci Code a few years later, so not exactly top secret occult lore here. In an interview with Hellchild magazine, King explained that The Graveyard was their longest album so far with 14 tracks, and that allowed him to work with more details and refinement. This may be true, but it's also a little less exciting and not as suspenseful as his best albums. Mind you, there's no such thing as a bad King Diamond album, this is just not among my favorites. When you rate a King Diamond album, you also take the story into consideration. The tale which is told here about a girl in a bloody dress is never as gripping as Voodoo or The Puppet Master, for instance. Musically it's fine though. My favorite songs from the album are Black of Night and The Creepy Shapes of Black. Similar to Fatal Portrait, The Spider's Lullaby is not entirely a concept album, but has also standalone songs mostly going heavy and straightforward. I think it's a bit less ambitious, but a lot more accessible than other albums for a general metal audience. Released in the mid-90s when suddenly everybody discovered new influences from alternative, industrial, etc., The Spider's Lullaby was a statement that King stands for traditional heavy metal, and I like that. I had my doubts when King Diamond announced a sequel to Abigail 15 years later. Could he revive the spirit of the 80s in 2002 with a different lineup, or was it just a commercial move to sell more records? But then I listened to heavy songs like Miriam and The Storm, the creepy atmosphere with the crying child and slippery stairs, and it really was like we traveled back to the Abigail days. It's very enjoyable for what it is. Merciful Fate had put out massive albums like Don't Break the Oath, and it was by no means guaranteed that King could continue on the same level with a different band. The press was confident, however, putting them on the magazine covers even before the first album was out. Fatal Portrait became a kind of hybrid, presenting separate songs like Charon or Halloween, which would have worked great with Merciful Fate as well, while it was also a first attempt at a concept with several connected songs, which is however far from what he would achieve later on the best King Diamond albums. So I think, despite some nostalgic love for this album, it is fair to put it in the middle of the ranking. To be on the safe side, King had changed his makeup, as the album cover shows us right away, with a lot more blood red in it. As he stated in an interview with Horror Infernal magazine, he was sued at the time by the lawyers of Gene Simmons, who apparently believed he was the inventor of wearing makeup on stage.
No.
Anyhow, I'll never forget the tour for Conspiracy in 1990. Candlemass and Savatage were supporting, and the latter were absolutely awesome, playing their classics from The Dungeons Are Calling to Hall of the Mountain King. While I was still on my knees sending thankful prayers to the metal gods, King Diamond appeared and performed a show which seemed kind of pedestrian after Savatage. The sound that night was extremely loud and noisy. That didn't help either. I ended up being slightly disappointed by King that particular night, but for the only time ever. But back to the studio album. It was the most progressive album by the band so far, if you listen to At the Graves with its many breaks and crazy disharmonic parts. So far so good, but they are overdoing it a bit with the aptly titled Something Weird on the B-side. Although there is one of my all-time faves on it, Sleepless Nights, I didn't enjoy Conspiracy altogether as much as some of the previous albums. The most underrated King Diamond album. Many fans didn't like it so much because it wasn't what they expected. King had the courage here to drop his European Gothic horror background and try something more American. Listen to the percussion instruments in the title track. Personally, I was really fascinated by this voodoo magic fantasy because the characters are becoming alive, from Salem the Butler to Lacroix the Sorcerer. Normally I don't like double albums with 4 sides of vinyl to turn and turn again, but here it makes sense. Side 1 is the history of the house, side 2 getting to know the characters, side 3 providing the heaviest pieces of music with the plans to kill, 1 down, 2 to go, and the ritual. Side 4 the conclusion, but with a cliffhanger. It's an efficacious structure. The Eye is a concept album about burning a witch, kind of the most obvious subject you'd expect from a black metal band. But musically it contains a lot of great heavy songs like The Curse and Eye of the Witch, as well as quiet moments in Insanity and Two Little Girls. It seems to me like one of the most balanced albums King has done. This is certainly the album with the scariest and bloodiest story. The narrator and his love Victoria are turned into living puppets, and he tells the horror of becoming a thing from his own perspective. Horror metal doesn't get darker than this. Musically, except for the slow down and so sad, the album is relentlessly pushing us forward, not offering any escape. The writers of Metal Hammer voted for them as their album of the month. It doesn't seem surprising with its musical qualities, but you've got to realize how bold the presentation of this album was for 1988. For example, Slayer had just released South of Heaven with a cover showing a skull drenched in a sea of blood. That was the kind of thing you expected from evil metal bands. And then King Diamond comes along, puts out a record about a nice old house where Grandma invites guests for tea time. Didn't resemble anything other bands did at the time, so the innovation factor is really impressive. Them remained a classic of the 80s. Abigail was the first entire concept album, the time when the King Diamond project was fully fledged. Sounding tighter after their first tour together, the band decided to push everything on the next level. Beginning with a sinister funeral, the atmosphere of the songs grabs you and never lets go. Masterpiece. I hope this inspires you to give 1 or 2 King Diamond albums another spin tonight. See you.